It's time to lock in. We're talking SEC, college football, and more. This is AP as we see it.
I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I said I'm all about that action.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham from LA, Lower Alabama. This is AP as we see it, a weekly syndicated 1-hour show discussing the Southeastern Conference, college football on the national scene, and other sports. We want to welcome you to another edition of AP as we see it. Right off the bat, we want to mention our social media platforms, the Instagram, the Facebook, the X account, especially our YouTube channel, which we broadcast the video every week. It's at AP as we see it. And then we also provide all our interviews from the events that we cover, the ball games, the ceremonies, the inductions at AP as we see it, and also at AP Stedham, my personal one. So check out and subscribe to those social media platforms. Also, we archive on Spotify every week. Every episode is there since we first started recording. And you can leave some questions. Just reach out to me at any time. If you have any questions for the show, we will entertain those. We want to mention our sponsors, Greer's Market, 29 locations, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi. Lucy's Famous Recipe. She has the book now. You can buy it online or in the stores. They have the groceries to go. You can have it delivered to your home, your office, the venues for your families, your friends, and all the football games, the basketball games, the baseball games, softball, gymnastics, whichever you're watching with the SEC and other teams. We have the weekly specials online, the coloring contest for all the children. I know they love that. And for the special occasions, the holidays, the birthdays, the anniversaries, you can buy the fresh produce, the dinner essentials, delicious food and snacks at unbeatable prices. And remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And also, we'd like to say hello to our friends in Atlanta. We'll be staying there at their Cortland Grand Hotel for the SEC Media Days. They have the spacious rooms, the beautiful indoor pool with the tropical setting right there in the downtown Atlanta, the restaurants. They have the buffets, and on the weekends, they cook your breakfast special for you. And they have the gift shops, and you're right there in the downtown Atlanta. They have excellent parking as well. So check out Ben Jackamura and his staff. They do a wonderful job. We'd like to mention in segment 3 and 4, our guest is Sam Hutchens, the Ole Miss writer for the Clarion-Ledger segment 3 and 4. But we'd like to welcome our very special guest for segment 1 and 2, Kevin Carter, all SEC, consensus All-American, University of Florida, defensive lineman extraordinaire, 14-year NFL veteran, first-round draft choice. Kevin Carter with CBS Sports. He's a college football analyst. Welcome to AP as we see it, Kevin.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the intro. There's, when you get old, there's too many things on your Wikipedia page to introduce you by. So yes. That was nice and simple. That's good.
I tried to highlight the all-star credentials at the top of the list for you. But anyway, a Florida Gator, but he knows college football well, and our audience is waiting patiently to hear from you. But I guess the first thing, Kevin, when I'm thinking about Florida, it's their coach, Billy Napier, because he was in a predicament last year. That had to be one of the toughest schedules. So what might be some reasonable goals? They surprised some people last year. So what are some reasonable goals this year?
I think you have to think unreasonable goals, as they come out of your mouth in terms of Florida football, because I think last year there's no way that you could look at that schedule and look at the situation at quarterback, trying to keep Graham Mertz upright and healthy through a season with a makeshift kind of patchwork offensive line. Jaden Ball was better than everyone thought, right? He's a surprise, but I think no one saw Florida going 8-5 last year with that schedule. No way. No one saw them beating LSU. No one saw them beating Ole Miss. Sorry to our producer who's back behind the scenes, David. But yeah. No one saw those matchups going in Florida's favor. And, you drop 2 or 3 games, especially conference-wise, then it's a different complexity on the season. You're not looking at the outlook. You're not thinking as highly as you are of DJ Lagway, the quarterback situation. But all those things did happen. So to answer your question, I say be unreasonable in your ask, in your expectation, because there's no way having the 12th ranked total offensive unit and the 15th, this is out of 16 teams in the SEC, ranked
Right.
defensive unit. There's no way they should have been 8-5, right? They
Yeah.
were Johnny on the spot. Their defense was very, gave up way too many yards,
Yeah.
on the ground, was inconsistent, but they made plays when they had to make plays. And they put it together. They fought. They willingly willed themselves into a better state of being. And I know, I try to tell this story about how teams evolve from year to year. It's about that incremental increase, winning some games you're not supposed to win, changing the perception both in the locker room and also, in the public. And I spent time with Billy Napier last offseason, okay? He's opened the door. He loves former players when they come back and share, and meeting with these coaches, meeting with the players, being a fly on the wall, which he gave me that kind of carte blanche access, which I'd love him for. He's doing everything the right way. He's building this team from the inside out. He's getting good players, but he's also trying to recruit good character players. He is concerned about the culture of the locker room. He's concerned about the standard to which you prepare as a Gator, and everything that was laid down from, the likes of Steve Spurrier to Urban Meyer and everyone that's come since then. So he's trying to build his team with integrity, and I can respect that, but it's really the hard way to do it, right? It's like in today's day and age, you've got, all these bells and whistles and smoke and mirrors with, bringing in this recruit, bringing in this hot coach or this and that. And he's not doing any of that. He's really sticking by his guns and developing talent with bringing in, select pieces to help where they are. So I say he's doing it the right way. Have an unreal expectation going into the season. To start the season, you look at your first 3 SEC games, okay? LSU, Texas, and Texas A&M respectively. You got to look at that in that little span of time as a little mini season. You're like, hey, this is our first initial impact in the SEC. We got to win 2 of those games, period. I don't care how you slice it up. You've got to find a way to beat LSU like you did last year, and you've got to find a way to be on the same field with the Texas team that has – way too much talent, right? You got to find a way to play with them, but maybe Texas A&M with a couple of young quarterbacks who they got, Marcel Reed and Zeno, right? So, you still don't know who they are. They have dudes because, Elko, filled the cupboard in terms of talent, especially up front, but you got to find a way to win those games. You got to win 2 of those games, and I think it could change the expectation and the internal confidence kind of going through the rest of the season for the Florida Gators.
Oh, yeah, it's one of my questions I asked about the schedule. But DJ Lagway, he was 6-1, showed some. He was promising as a quarterback in the SEC. What can he do better to help this team?
He can process better. He can take care of the football better, and he can also understand that his role as the person who touches the ball every play has the biggest impact on what they do offensively and defensively. It's a quarterback-driven game. I thought he was very instinctual. He was able to get himself out of trouble at times, held onto the ball a little too long at times, and that comes with processing. That comes with your general, overall football IQ, and that will improve. I think also who you have behind him also will help him improve, because that quarterback, that kid came from Louisville. Okay, that kid's coming from Louisville, and he's coached by Jeff Brom. And when I see a quarterback coached by Jeff Brom, I know that he has superior processing ability. He will help Lagway in that quarterback room, and that will be a better, more solid unit for the Gators. But he has to take care of the football, and he's got to stretch the field. I think he has the personnel on the outside to do it, but does he have the offensive line to do it, right? He's got to have protection, and they've got to run the ball. They got to turn the page with Jaden Baugh. He's in his sophomore year. He was in sensation, but you've got depth at running back now. Now you've got an expectation of a guy who looks like he's, an all SEC type, player that needs to be the dude on the ground. With him and using Lagway as a weapon in the run game as well, man, keep those defenses on it. Keep those defenses honest. Keep them bringing people into the box, and then with Sturdivant and Trey Wilson and Aiden Mizell, stretch the field, and that comes from quarterback processing. What you see on a down-to-down basis, him being able to process, diagnose, and deliver the football. He's got all the tools. He's got the arm, he's got the mobility, and he seems to have that it factor, that wow factor, that I'm that dude
That's
factor
right.
in him as well. So he wants to be that guy. I don't see why he wouldn't take another profound step forward, but the rest of this team has got to come with him. They got to be better than number 12 in offense and number 15 out of 16 teams on defense.
Hey, Kevin, it sounds like you describe a team that's right there, but they need to win probably some close ball games, upset a few people early to give themselves confidence. Keep the quarterback healthy. He's shown his ability to compete and win in the Southeastern Conference. But it sounds like offensively, they're ripe to really surprise some people. We're going to continue our discussion with Kevin Carter, a CBS college football analyst, Gator legend, and we'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it. Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use groceries to go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And we're back with AP as we see it. Our very special guest, former University of Florida consensus All-American, All-Pro, 14-year NFL veteran, CBS college football analyst, Kevin Carter. Hey, Kevin, defensively, a name that pops up, I think, is a sophomore, L.J. McCray, the big lineman, 6'6", about 270 sophomore. What does he need to do for this team?
Well, I think the one thing that I think will help him is the quality of depth that they have along the front. They've got returning guys that will be incremental in the success. I spent some time with Coach Chapman, the defensive line coach, there last year, and he's a young coach, and he's relatively unknown, I guess, on the national scene as being a defensive line guru.
Yes.
Right. But I'm always very curious on how you run your meetings and how you run your individual session with your defensive linemen. And that's the place I followed him around to every single drill last summer and in the spring. And I loved what I saw in terms of preparation. Now, results on the field from last year weren't what they wanted, right? They didn't have that overwhelming, strong presence, succinctness, and group continuity that would lend itself to being a dominating defense, or even being a defense that takes one aspect of an opposing offense away. So they weren't quite that. They didn't have those dudes, but they were able to muster up the bend but don't break mentality in the red zone and make plays when they had to. When you have a player like McCray, it's like, look, you're basically, everyone's kind of pre-touting, and you're kind of a precursor, and it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to be really good, that you're going to be great, right? Now's the time for you to step up and be great. And it's not just him that has to, have better pad level, have better hand placement, have better awareness, have higher IQ for the game. It's everyone in the room. It's because if he has those compliments and he has the people around him that step up and really make this defense, a good two deep across the front seven in terms of quality depth, and having the ability to roll in and out with defensive interchangeable defensive linemen, that's what's going to help him be the best that he can be. Now, when I see him in person, when I go down there, I'm going to have an earful of what I think he should do, right? But it's just I'm just some old middle-aged crusty defensive lineman that's looking from afar. But I like the way that Coach Chapman has developed him thus far. I love his hand placement, love his size, obviously, love his ability to get skinny, move, bend, and everything. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's a difference maker, but difference makers can only be difference makers if they have the complements around them. This defense needs to be better. It needs to be more succinct in terms of its continuity, in terms of gap responsibility and knowing where you're supposed to be and getting there in a hurry. So the overall, I think, football IQ of this defense has to improve. But last year, the one person that they brought in, a senior defensive analyst that came and helped, and his name is escaping me right now. Maybe David can help me out behind the scenes. But when they brought him in, I loved in their meetings him doing the all 22, having everyone on the defense up and going through and defining each person's responsibility on any given play. The way that they're trying to culture and teach them from a defensive standpoint is very much on an NFL level. The one thing you hate doing as a defensive lineman, you hate watching film with your team because you got a lot of coaches talking, right? But when the defensive coordinator gets up there and he starts with the left end and he goes through everyone's gap responsibility and what you should be thinking, it helps you to be a better team player because you understand exactly how you fit into a defense and you know exactly what you have to do, and it allows you to play more free and trust the man next to him to do his job. I'm not going to go in the B gap when I should be in the C gap to hold the leverage so that my buddy makes the play, coming down, scraping like he's supposed to because I trust him. So that whole mentality, I know that's a long-winded way of saying that, yes, he's a good player, but man, this defense has so much room for improvement. 15th overall in terms of total defense. I think they were, 12 or 13 against the run. Man, this defense can get better. It's not just him. He can be a star, but man, the rest of this defense has to come along with him.
Yeah, and if the defensive line is active and disruptive, then the secondary improves exponentially if that happens. So I understand your point about it. And it's a total group effort defensively for sure. I love the kicker's name, Trace Mack. What a name for a kicker. 18 of 21, I guess he was. But if they play in some close games, I believe they can feel comfortable with him as the kicker.
Yeah, look, all aspects of your team come up, and your kicker is someone that, special teams are hidden. They're hidden advantages, and I spent some time this offseason. I went to the Coaches Award. Steve Spurrier has a first-year SEC Coaches Award, and it's a growing event, and I love to be there because of the coaches you get to talk to kind of a non-intimidating environment. I mean, Dabo was there.
That's right.
It was great to talk to him, talk to Shane Beamer. And I'm only referencing Shane Beamer because I love to pick his brain every time I see him on what his dad kind of put in place at Virginia Tech a long time ago, the Beamer ball aspect. And to have guys that were truly bought in from a special teams standpoint, not letting any of those downs that, you turn away from and check the other game. You're not watching the transition of, punts or kickoffs or anything like that. Because you're not really, you're thinking it's just it's just another regular play. It's just them turning the ball over in a kind of orderly way. No, man, there's hidden yards. There's the whole battle of the vertical field position, flipping the field, that awareness, those little things, those little details are what make you better incrementally, right? And sometimes it's hard to take big steps. You're not going to out athlete anybody. There are very few special guys that can make a difference, that make you that much better. But man, if the football IQ of everyone in the room is elevated and they're able to play more fast, and when maybe they come out there and you think it's a routine punt, they're able to make something special happen, or if it's a kickoff return or anything like that. And I think if you're one of those teams that's trying to climb the ladder respectively in your conference, special team play, your specialist kicker, punter, they should be paramount on your list in terms of shoring up, giving you the best chance to get those hidden advantages that don't necessarily show up when we do matchups 1 and 2 deep on either side of the ball.
Kevin, I think I could play special teams for you. You get me excited right now. I'm fired up. I really am. But I understand that it made that little edge for them, and a team that's trying to rise. That helps out. Kevin, you like the playoff format 5-11 or the 4-4, 2-2-3-1? Do you have a preference, and why?
I think they got it. I think they're getting it right. I think right about the time when the 14 playoff format didn't work, then we had the 12-team format. I personally thought that it should have went to 8 teams. I thought that maybe you have the Power 4 in maybe, and then you've got 4 at-large teams. that could have been, or you got the old Power Five, or doing some semblance of it would allow for everyone.
Yes.
But who didn't enjoy watching all those playoff games last year with a 12-team format? That was absolutely sick. Having home games essentially in a playoff type atmosphere in your home stadium, if you're one of those teams hosting that first round, I mean, the ratings had to have been just absolutely ludicrous and sick, because those were games that no one wanted to miss. So I like the format. I think they can do a better job leading up to it in terms of being more transparent on how they're going to make decisions and how the rankings are. I think there was a lot of confusion because people saw, backloaded, at 12, at 13, 14, 15, you saw all these SEC teams that had more
Yes.
losses than the teams that were, 2021, and everyone's mad and everyone's upset. And it's like, no, you can actually do this. This is actually something that is just a foregone conclusion, because this is going to work itself out once we have an SEC champion, once we have an ACC champion, once we have a Big 12 champion. So I think they can be a little bit more transparent in how they present the information and how we explain the rankings, because I think some people were a little misled in thinking that their team had a chance to make it in, when it was always going to be, the SEC champions, always going to be these certain teams, and they were going to give more credence and put more weight on a certain conference's. Well, if you're not in the Big Ten or the SEC, you were pretty much on the short end of the stick in terms of having your games mean something. And that's the relative strength of schedule that has to do more with your representation significant within the top 25 in the country. If you got teams that are ranked, those games just mean more. So I think they could be a little bit more transparent. I like the format going forward, though.
Last minute, Kevin, you cover the Big Ten now with the CBS. What do you like to tell the people in the SEC about the Big Ten? 1 minute, Kevin.
The Big Ten is a good product. They've added some quality teams from out west, and I think they've really made for exciting matchups. I think the SEC has its work cut out in terms of, getting better as a conference. I think the one thing that they will always get the benefit of the doubt is the strength of schedules, right? So you'll have some 2-loss teams, maybe even a 3-loss team that will be more relevant than other teams, and that's one of the luxuries of being in the SEC. But don't sleep on the Big Ten. Don't sleep on the Big Ten. There are some good teams, and I think I would love to see more matchups, Big Ten, SEC, in the regular season.
That series. That series.
It would kind of give us a little bit more to go on, instead of having these two entities that get mutual respect in terms of voting and being ranked highly, but they don't play each other. I'm like, I want to see them clash a little bit more. And I think maybe we move away from, obviously a lot of the conferences are doing away with the whole East and West thing. I think that's a good thing. Just play conference games, play your way through, play enough conference games to matter, and then have your conference championship. And I think you go from there. But Big Ten's a good product. I miss you, SEC, though. I miss you having you on our network. I really do.
Hey, Kevin, thank you so much. Kevin Carter, CBS Sports Football Analyst. We thank you so much, and we'll be right back after these messages with Sam Hutchens, the Clarion-Ledger Ole Miss beat writer. We'll be back after these messages with AP as we see it. Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And we're back with AP as we see it for segment 3 and 4 with Sam Hutchens, the Clarion-Ledger Ole Miss beat writer. Hey, Sam, thank you for being part of our episode today with AP as we see it.
AP, happy to be on. Thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Ole Miss, what an interesting team with the head coach, a lot of publicity. I thought last year, Sam, that was their year. That was their year because they brought in the defensive player. Lane spoke of the length and the type of player on the defensive side that was an SEC caliber, had the quarterback in his third year, excellent receivers, good running backs, but they fell short But anyway, this Ole Miss team, what is the first thing you like to tell people about the 2025 edition? I know we haven't played a game yet, but what's the anticipation for this team? The first thing you like to tell people?
Yeah, anticipation is an interesting word. I think because last year's anticipation was so high, and then
Yes.
you watch them beat Georgia and you watch them send so many players first rounders in the NFL draft, and you're like, oh, that was valid. I think AP,
Yes.
we both saw at times Ole Miss looked like, man, they could have maybe hung with Ohio State all the way in the national championship. They played like that at times. So much talent,
Right.
and a lot of that talent is gone this year. So I think this year, I think that the quarterback is so electrifying. Austin Simmons, who was Jackson Dart's backup this year, that even though you're losing a quarterback like Jackson Dart, who went to the Giants in the first round, was obviously super talented. I think with the quarterback, I think you have a ceiling where you could break into that top 12. But I don't think the ceiling is national championship hang with Ohio State level that maybe it was last year.
Yeah, I see. Now, it's an interesting point. Division II quarterback from Ferris State transferred. Sam, will he have a chance to compete or be part of some special packages? Because I know he's a dual threat quarterback.
Yeah, that's right. Chambliss, and he runs well. I think it's pretty safe to rule out anyone competing for the starting job unless you're Austin Simmons. And maybe AP, I think a lot of that is maybe 10 years ago, if you're Lane Kiffin, you say the room is wide open. But this year, if you have a quarterback you feel good about, you don't want him getting out in the transfer portal. You don't want him listening to other offers. So I think in this day and age, coaches, at least maybe Lane Kiffin's a little more secure about saying, you know what, Austin Simmons is the guy. So that's kind of how we've approached it this year. That's all the signs that we've seen. And then kind of how they've treated him. They had Simmons out at the Rebel campaign stops throughout the summer and all that. So I think Simmons is the guy. Yeah, you're right that maybe there's an opportunity for Chambliss, a bigger guy, to be a goal line situation. I don't think Simmons is necessarily going to be the runner that Dart was. I know Dart had people cringing all last year. He hated his line. He put his head down.
Right.
So, maybe if you want that aspect, maybe you bring someone like Chambliss in. But, yeah, backup quarterback is probably the spot that he'll be competing for. And Ole Miss has brought in quite a few quarterbacks. So that's kind of an interesting element there too, is everyone's hyping up Simmons, but who will win that backup spot?
Right. And Lane Kiffin, I think he's the type of head coach that will not hesitate to make a change. Like some coaches are very loyal to a fault to keeping in the first string quarterback. Would you say that's his personality?
Yeah, I think last year, kind of one of the big headlines was anyone in Oxford would tap you on the shoulder and ask, why is Ulysses Bentley not running the ball? And he was kind of the running back that a lot of players or a lot of the fans and the media thought would be the guy entering the year, but it didn't really work out like that. Kiffin went with Henry Parrish, a transfer from Miami, and Parrish played pretty well, but then he broke his leg. And after that, Ole Miss kind of just had a question mark at running back all year, whereas many thought, hey, what's going on with Bentley? Why would Bentley not slide in? And Lane wasn't too keen on giving anyone a super straight answer about it. But what he did say is, we're comfortable with this package, we're comfortable with that package. So Lane is definitely not afraid to do the unconventional, the example being, hey, he ran, JJ Pegues, the defensive lineman, fullback extraordinaire. He was the guy getting carries instead of maybe a lot of people thought, hey, you have Ulysses Bentley. So, yeah, Lane, for better or for worse, a lot of times it has been for better. He's definitely not afraid to do something a little unconventional.
Sam, I always like to ask people, who keeps you up at night on the offensive side, that wide receiver, running back, tight end? Is there a player that on this Ole Miss roster in 2025 that might keep a defensive coordinator up at night?
That's a good question. I'll tell you, I think and I've said his name a lot already, so I could throw out some other honorable mentions. Like, I think Dejon Stribling, a transfer from Oklahoma State, will be very good in this offense. He'll play the X on the outside. And they brought in a tight end from Arkansas, Luke Haas, who was a high-profile guy coming out of Tulsa in college. Yeah. And he's had some really good snaps, some drives as well. So I think those two guys could emerge as stars. But I feel bad for saying his name so much. But this new quarterback, Austin Simmons, there's not a lot of film on him. but
Yes.
from what we have seen, he's been electric. So it's kind of one of those deals where maybe he's keeping Ole Miss up at times too. Like we haven't truly seen what this guy can do for better or
Yeah.
for worse. But I mean, he's when he came in to back up Jackson Dart for one possession against Georgia, the Rebels the Rebels hadn't scored yet, and Dart twists his ankle. Simmons comes in and leads. I think it was a 62, 63-yard drive. So maybe on both ends of the ball, Austin Simmons is incredibly unproven, but he has the talent that could make defensive coordinators, especially early in the season when there's still not a lot of tape on him, wonder how we're going to stop him. And maybe the Ole Miss people as well, saying he doesn't have a lot of experience. If he needs 7 points in going to, at OU next season, what happens if Austin's down 7 with 2 minutes to go?
Sure. Now, the main thing with the offense, you're trying to keep that quarterback upright. How's that offensive line, Sam?
Mm-hmm. A lot of new pieces coming in and out. That's kind of the position group I feel like we don't know a ton about, mostly because AP, it wasn't great last year, whereas there were NFL talent all everywhere else. The offensive line wasn't great last year. So I think it'll be I think there'll be a lot of new pieces coming in, and it'll be kind of a mix of maybe it looks different week 1 of training camp on August 30th or something, or August 1st, and then
August 1st, right?
August 1st, and then what it'll look like on August 30th, and what it'll look like in October. So I'd hate to even go too far into it, just because I don't know too much about it. I'm not sure anyone knows exactly how it'll slot in. But right, I think I'll give you one name is they brought in transfer from Arkansas, Patrick Kutas. I'm impressed with him. I mean, he'll be the guy I'm looking at week 1. I think he'll be a good player.
Be a good player for him. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, I love to discuss the kickers because when you have all these difficult games, they're close. And as a coach, I want to know what my kicker's capabilities so I can make these decisions with confidence. So what would you say about the kicking game right now, Sam?
That's a good question. Ole Miss lost their kicker, Caden Davis, who was up and down. He hit some long field goals, kind of missed one against Kentucky. So a lot of people
I saw that one. Yeah, I saw that one
with him. Yeah, you were there for that. They brought in a good player though, Lucas Carniero from Western Kentucky. So he's the transfer guy they brought in. I imagine there will be some competition for him, but that's who I'm expecting to start week 1. And he's a good player. I think that I don't think he'll be any sort of weakness that fans are dreading this year or anything like that.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you this question. This might be a longer answer, Sam. We might have to continue this. We have about a little bit over 2 minutes. But how has Lane Kiffin changed? Maybe what is a big change that you've seen from Lane Kiffin, maybe as a coach, head coach at Ole Miss?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, and I'll tell you, I've been on the beat. I've been on the beat for about 1 year, 1 calendar year.
Right,
so I haven't quite seen this, but maybe the most obvious thing is the physical difference. He came in from Florida Atlantic. I mean, I think he's used the word overweight or fat. He definitely has slimmed up quite a bit now, and he loves talking about that when he goes on the Theo Vaughn podcast or these other podcasts, national things. He loves talking about, and it's kind of one of his stories that he's open about is, hey, I cut out alcohol. I've focused on fitness a lot, and I think it's maybe, excuse the pun, but made him a lighter person in terms of personality and just bouncing around a little bit. You can catch him in Oxford in the summer just playing pickleball on the courts by the football practice facility. So that's maybe an unconventional answer, but one thing I've noticed and I'm most impressed about him is, hey, he's really gotten his frame, his physical, just the way he operates into shape, and it shows. He'll go to hot yoga at 5 a.m. on the square in Oxford, and then he'll post about it and say, Jackson Dart, where were you today? I was up at 5 a.m. doing hot yoga and all that. So that's one thing we can get into on the field, but I've been most impressed with about is, wow, this is a guy 40 years old or something like that, and he's undergone this big physical transformation. That's impressed me.
Yeah, I think, Sam, that might be the first ever hot yoga and an SEC head football coach in the same sentence. So that was something you brought to
Probably.
light to our audience here. We really appreciate that. But Sam, when we come back, we're going to continue to discuss the rest of the Ole Miss team and the defense and the schedule and things like that. I want to get some of your opinions about college football as well, Sam. So we're going to be right back after these messages with AP as we see it.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it. Our very special guest, Sam Hutchens from the Clarion-Ledger, Ole Miss beat writer. Sam, we were discussing the Ole Miss football team and their head coach Lane Kiffin. I think it's a lot of fun to cover him. I would think, Sam.
You know, I came from, as you know, AP, I came from the Oklahoma State beat. So I was, you know, and with how much time beat reporters spend around these college coaches, you really appreciate when a coach, you know, it's like we'll leave these press conferences and say, well, at least that wasn't boring. And Mike Gundy was certainly like that at Oklahoma State,
right.
and Lane Kiffin too. So it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, you know what, I always appreciate someone who's fun and we'll get you a little back and forth. And, you know, the thing about Lane is even sometimes we'll ask him, you know, as Lane Kiffin has kind of emerged as almost a voice for national college sports in a way, you know, almost like Gundy is. Some of these coaches have been around and talk about these things. They emerge as these national, you know, people ask them for their opinions nationally on all these major developments. And Lane will sometimes say, I don't want to talk about that. But since you asked, and then go on and on.
Right. Yeah. You get a long answer from him too, I'm sure. He's kind of wants to deflect it, but not really. But Sam, defensively, you know, last year I thought they brought in all those players, as I mentioned. But what about the team defensively? What are some of your projections?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's where this team was built last year, which sounds crazy to say because they had a quarterback that was a top 25 pick and so much talent across the board. But I say that by far the best unit last year was the defensive line. It was stacked. Walter Nolan, Princely in the middle, JJ Pegues in the middle. Both those guys were draft picks. On the outside, Jared Ivey and then Princely Umanmielen. So it was stacked last year. It showed those guys dominated, and now they're all gone. So this and that was kind of Lane Kiffin's goal, as he said 2 years ago, Ole Miss got crushed by Georgia, and Lane said, you know what, we're going to rebuild this team from the foundation. We're going to get this defensive line. We're going to get it crazy good. And it worked. They beat Georgia in 2024. Now the challenge is doing that year in and year out. And so Ole Miss has added some nice pieces on the defensive line. I find it almost cruel to say that, oh, they'll be as good as last year, because that almost feels impossible to me. But they have a lot of high-profile pieces. I'll tell you, AP, they lost, the Rebels lost coming around the edge, Princely Umanmielen. He was a great pass rusher, edge rusher.
You said that better than me. I'll call him Prince. Yeah.
Okay, and I've had practice and I get to keep my practice because they brought in his brother, Prince Will Umanmielen. So I learned how to spell Umanmielen, and I get to keep that skill next year too. So they brought in his brother, a transfer from Nebraska, who's pretty high profile, and then on the other edge they have an LSU transfer, Deshaun Womack. So I think those two guys will be huge. You know, Ole Miss hit on everyone on the defensive line transfer portal last year. So those two guys this year, Womack and Umanmielen 2.0, the Kiffin and company, Pete Golding, they really need those two guys to hit for this defensive line to kind of keep hold as one of the best units in the country.
So that pass rush you anticipate will be good enough and help that secondary. How's that secondary, Sam? Because we know this is a quarterback-centric era where you're throwing the ball primarily. So how's that secondary?
Yeah, good question. The Rebels lost Trey Amos. He was one of the best cornerbacks in the country too. He was a real lockdown player, but you know, not the player that really jumps off the box score in a huge way. Just kind of the guy that, hey, stick on their number one receiver and you'll get 2 targets this whole game. So he was great, and he's gone. They brought in a cornerback from Arkansas who I think will slide into his spot. He's pretty solid. And the rest of the secondary is just kind of growing up now. The rest of the secondary was younger behind Ole Miss. But this year I think it'll be names that grow up and get better instead of just bringing in these transfer portal players. So they'll be all right. And the star player on the team, I should have mentioned him just because he needs to probably have been mentioned first, but is Suntarine Perkins. And he was great last year and kind of one guy that didn't go to the draft. So this year he'll be playing in the middle. Not quite sure if he'll play middle linebacker or not, but he'll play in the middle. And he's one of those kind of guys that lines up as linebacker, but he may very well lead the team in sacks this year.
I see. Looking at the schedule, Sam, what games at home they must win? I mean, we all know about Kentucky last year. They went on the road. They lost LSU game, lost to Florida. Looking at the schedule, how would you characterize the must wins to have a chance to be a contender for a playoff berth?
Well, this whole schedule is so different from last year. I thought last year the Rebels had a great kind of ramp they played 4 non-conference games before getting to the SEC. And this year, the SEC comes in week 2 and week 3. So it's definitely different this year, especially with the Rebels starting, again, a young quarterback in Austin Simmons. There's no easy on-ramp to get going this season. The Rebels, just woke up with 5 wins or whatever it was last year. But the huge home games this year is the first home game of the SEC season is in week 3 against Arkansas. The Rebels, they smacked Arkansas last year in Fayetteville. I know that won't sit well with Arkansas. And to boot, Ole Miss took the tight end from Arkansas, a linebacker, or a tight end, an offensive lineman, a defensive back from Arkansas, who are all pretty good players. So that's one of those games that I think Ole Miss should have it on paper, especially at home. But I think there will be a lot of other stuff floating around, in terms of revenge and personal revenge games that could make that one interesting in week 3 off the bat. And then the other one that I'm really looking at is the Florida game. That's in Oxford at the end of the year. And that was the game that really slammed the door on Ole Miss's college football playoff hopes last year.
Sure
Sure you remember that, AP. And
sure did.
So that game, you almost look at this Florida game, it's in a similar spot, this second to last game of the year, and that will be a fun one, especially if Ole Miss is in a similar position. If the Rebels have, 2 losses at that point, then they get to play Florida again. It's like, okay, here it goes. And, who knows how that Florida team will look. But I imagine Lagway will be playing pretty well, and that could be a very fun game too, for a little revenge. Yeah,
that would be quite a ending to the season, that type of game with the 2 losses. And remember Gainesville. Be the cry. Remember Gainesville. Right? Sam, we're going to move over to, we got in the remaining about 3.5 minutes, college football. Do you have a preference on the playoff format, Sam? And I want you to bring up any other point that you feel strongly about. The 5-11, the 4-4, what is it? 2-2-3-1.
I'll tell you what, I like 12. 12 is great to me. That's a good number. You could probably sell me on 14 or 16, and especially the people that need to be sold on it are the people that stand to benefit actual dollars. So I'm sure it'll get there someday. But I like 12. I think that the obvious adjustment that needed to be made was the lack of automatic seeding. I wish we were all watching that playoff last year thinking, yeah, this is cool, but can you imagine if we could slot it in how they actually finished and
the ranking, according to the ranking,
Yeah, so that was the change that I think needed to be made, and you could kind of look back at this playoff and almost laugh like, they probably messed this up a little bit. I'm sure it'll be changed next year, and sure enough, the decision makers got that right. So did you agree with that, AP? I thought that was the right move to
that's the right move. The straight seeding based on ranking, I think that was appropriate, and I don't like automatic qualifiers being put in the slot. I don't care for that. Like the SEC is always saying it means more. Well, prove it. That's what I say.
Right.
Prove it on the field. I mean, that's college athletics competition. Yeah, with this automatic qualifying business, I don't care for that. Yeah, your automatic qualifier as a champion, yes, but the seeding, no. Sam, any other point about college football moving forward past this season that you want to bring up? Anything, should the SEC play 9 games? Anything you want to discuss in the last remaining minute and a half or so?
I think that any point I bring up is probably likely to change in 1 or 2 years. And I just wish that we could settle on something. That's like my biggest peeve in general is, especially with it, and if I could dial it in a little more, like just this whole NIL world. I think that we are so far gone from the original intent of, hey, if you're Johnny Manziel, go sign autographs and go get paid for that. Or if you have, if your name is Kool-Aid McKinstry and you're a defensive back from Alabama, of course, go sign a deal with Kool-Aid, do a commercial for them. That's so cool. Because I'm all for these athletes getting compensated. They have incredibly difficult jobs and they bring in a ton of revenue. Like, what other realm of this planet are you not compensated for that? But I think we're so far from the original intent of doing that. And I think it's hurting a lot of fans. It's hurting the bigger picture of college athletics by just blanket checks to these guys coming in. It's almost like a salary. That my big question I worry about is, hey, what happens if in 10 years we keep on this current track and all the money is being dumped into next year's salary? I just wonder what's going to happen in 10 years when buildings are crumbling across campuses all over the country. And it makes me think, like, what is the off-ramp in all this? Because it's sustainable. We've only been paying players for, 3 years or something right now? No buildings are crumbling. But if this current model goes forward, I just wonder what's going to happen if no one's been saving any money for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in these big projects. Is the choice always going to be, hey, would you rather us pay players or put money toward this building? Because I know coaches would always say, man, get me someone who can get me 8 sacks next year. They don't want a new classroom or nice new lighting fixtures. But I think in 10 years, those lighting fixtures will feel more important. Oh, yeah.
Hey, we want to thank Sam Hutchens, Clarion-Ledger, Ole Miss beat writer. Check him out. We want to appreciate Kevin Carter, University of Florida, CBS College Football Sports Analyst, our sponsors, Greer's Markets, Cortland Grand Hotel, downtown Atlanta. Hey, Sam, we'll probably see you in Atlanta. Thank you so much for being part of AP As We See It, and we'll see y'all next week with another edition of AP As We See It. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.